hi everybody. Today's topic that I wanted to talk about was going to be the cuts and the guards. Again, I apologize for being in my basement. We are currently under a quarantine, as everybody in the world is. Weather is still uncooperative, so I can't get outside. I don't have any partners to play with at the moment, so this is mostly just me talking. Now, what are the cuts? What are the guards? Well, there are basically between 6 and 7 lines of attack laid out in pretty much every period manual you can reference. One of the most well-known, of course, is the Myers cutting drill. This is also something that's talked about by Fiore and a lot of the Bolognese schools, and this is something that continues all the way up until really quite modern 18th century military saber drills. It's actually one of my favorite ones to use, is that target rose. So this is not going to be an in-depth coverage of this. This is basically going to be a primer. This is intended for those people who are not really well versed in this or have a curiosity about it. And again, I'm not espousing any one style over another. They all have merit. I'm not trying to say that my way is the way. I'm just trying to present a different way to approach and think about it. So with all of that in mind, we're going to go through the basic 7 lines of attack. The thing that I want you to understand that I feel is important to take away from this is these lines, as delineated by all the cutting drills and all of the target roses, are not absolute. For example, it'll make more sense in a second, I promise. The first cut is not a line. The first cut is an arc off of this line. And that arc continues until it intersects with the arc of the 7th cut and the arc of the 5th cut. So we're going to talk about all of that in a second. First, I'm going to outline the cuts as I'm talking about them so that you understand them, and then we're going to talk some more about how to use them. Hi, everybody. All right, so as you can see, I've got a target rose or cutting board up. My version of it actually is kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different drills, but probably my biggest inspiration is from cutlass and saber targeting schools from like the 1840s or so. These are actually made for infantry sword exercises, but I think they're pretty applicable to what we're doing in the S.C.A. So again, we're going to go through these real quick, and I'm going to use my handy-dandy sword pointer. What I want you to understand again is that these individual lines are not hard lines. They are basically an arc. So this cut right here, from the upper right to the center, is usually called cut 1. It is our first primary cut. The second cut is from the upper left corner down to the center line. That is cut 2. Most commonly, cut 3 goes from the bottom right to the center, whereas cut 4 goes from the bottom left to the center. Okay? 5 goes from the right edge horizontally across the center. 6 goes from the left edge horizontally over the center. And 7 is the cut straight down the middle. Now again, the thing I want everybody to understand from the way I'm approaching this, I do not view these as hard lanes or lines. These are lines of attack or angles. So for example, the first cut actually exists in an arc from the base of the line until halfway distant between the next cuts. So for example, cut 7 goes from directly straight up in an arc to halfway to the first cut and halfway to the 7th cut. So don't think of them as hard lines, think of them as lanes. Okay guys, we've run into a problem. I've spent about a day and a half recording different wards, guards, positions, and everything. And I'm afraid that we've run out of commonality that I'm comfortable with. Pretty much everything that I do as far as my guards and wards is geared around my weapon style. I am a sword and buckler fighter. I may continue this video series specifically as a sword and buckler series, but the choices that I make and the reasons that I make them are based upon that choice. I've pretty much covered everything that's common to all of us. We all have to deal with measure. We all have to deal with distance and pace and timing. And I'm hoping that in disregarding the ABC conversation and beginning to measure distance conversation from reach and range, we're building a better vocabulary. I hope that my talk about pace and you understanding that pace doesn't require always action, but it requires choices about distance and see those interdependencies. And then how timing is affected by pace. I hope those discussions helped. I also hope that I've given you a different way to think about the human physiology and how it applies to the way we need to move our bodies, both in our lower bodies and our upper bodies, and about how those are two different systems. And there's a lot more detail I can go into about that, and a lot more discussions we can have about that. I hope that my very super basic primer on what the 7 lines of attack are helped. And there is more I can talk about for that, for sure. However, when it comes to the application of all of these things, specifically the cuts and the guards, the choices you make as far as weapon style do begin to have a factor. I don't want to, just as a basic example, I'm a sword and buckler fighter, so most of my wards are built around my sword, less so than my buckler. And while that's great for sword and buckler and or even single sword, and some of it can be applicable to strapped heater and sword fighting, a lot of it isn't, or it mechanically runs into problems. I don't feel comfortable at this point continuing with the veneer of commonality when we've outrun that. I may go back and readdress some concepts and expound on them. I may simply just offshoot some videos and talk more about concepts. But this is pretty much the entirety of the S.M.A.C talk, of the simplified method of amalgamated combat knowledge, because this runs into the end of commonality and the beginning of specificity. And without those specifics as part of the conversation, it begins to fall down. Please give me feedback, ask me questions, let me know if any of this helped you, if any of this confused you, if there's something you'd like to have more information on, or anything that you find to be complete and total bull hockey. Because those things may or may not be valid. I could be completely wrong. And if I'm way off base on any of this, I can be corrected. I want to learn. I am not a master. I'm not all knowledgeable and all knowing. I'm just a guy who's been doing this for a minute, and I have thoughts, and these are them. But please, continue to engage. Continue to give feedback. I look forward to hearing from you guys. All right? So for now, this may wrap up the S.M.A.C talk. We'll see how this goes from here on out. Thanks again, guys.